Welcome, everyone. Good evening. So nice to see you all come out this evening for Robert's webinar tonight. My name's Anna, and I work for the Institute of Holistic Nutrition. I am a head administrator for the in-class and online Eastern Division program. So tonight's webinar is on clinical iridology, how colors and patterns indicate underlying health conditions with Robert Tomilson, who you see here. We will go for about 45, 50 minutes, and then we'll take questions afterwards. So please write your questions in the Q&A box so we don't get them lost in the chat box, and then I will read them out at the end. And so also make sure you stay until the end of this webinar for the draw prize, which is an hour iris analysis with Robert at his clinic valued at $245. I won it the first time. So I'm telling you, you want to stay around, you want to stick around, which I know you will. Yeah. So tonight we will observe how to detect weakness in the body long before they manifest as disease. Iridology is a quick, accurate, non-invasive, and painless method of health analysis through the examination of the iris and a perfect marriage with any nutritional practice. The iris consists of tiny nerve fibers known as trabecula that reveal the body's constitution, inherent weakness, level of health, and the transitions that take place in a person's body according to the way he or she lives. So this is like a little snapshot of what you can expect in Robert's upcoming Con Ed course beginning in February, and it runs for, I believe, 17 weeks. And I know Robert will talk more about this later as well. So a little bit about Robert. Robert is a co-founder at the Institute of Natural Health Technologies and Bioenergetic Intolerance Elimination. And so that's BIE. Robert's devotion to the field of allergy research, immunology, electromagnetism, and biophysics has given him insight into the root causes of disease. Robert has done extensive study in the science and practice of iridology and practices various iridology methods, registered bioenergetics practitioner, and a holistic nutritionist. His studies include quantum and biophysics, homeopathy, traditional Chinese medicine, herbology, and holistic nutrition. And Robert teaches iridology in professional practice and has been teaching with us for, I don't even know, I think it's 8-9 years now. So Robert, you can finish up and take it away.
No, I think you just covered everything. No, any questions?
I got it all in.
Well, that's it in a nutshell. Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk to you about my favorite topic is iridology. I love it. I've been working with iridology for, I'd say about 27 years now. I've been teaching for 20-something years. And it's iridology is quite fun. I'll just explain a little bit about my background. When I first saw iridology, two friends of mine that didn't even know each other both said the same week, you know, Rob, you have food allergies. You should go see this lady, or I think it was a dairy allergy. You got to go see this lady up in Blackwater, Ontario. Where's Blackwater? And both people said, yeah, she's up in Blackwater. You know, the town with a gas station? Actually, I don't even think it has a gas station. I mean, it's so small, you blink, you're through it. And so I made my appointment to see her. It took me a couple of months to get in, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what an iridologist was. And I sat down in front of her and she's looking at me. Now, I've studied natural health for years before that. I started 37 years ago. So I'm an old timer in this area, but BIE was just introduced me about 26 years ago, I think. And so I sat down with this lady. There was no intake form, okay, I just sat down, waited for her. And she comes in and sits down and looks at me and talks to me for a second. She says, so when did you break your left leg? Oh, and I'm looking at my wife and I'm going, how she's looking, she says, don't look at me. I didn't say anything. Well, how does she know? I did break my left leg. I was 14 when it happened. And she says, is that around the same time you had pneumonia? Yeah, because with my leg up in a cast, I'm lying down and a lot, and the fluid was building up in my lungs. And how the heck did you know I had pneumonia? She says, what? Well, you still have antibiotic left in your left lung. Okay, how did you know it was my left lung? What are you doing? This is weird. And I thought, she's got to be a witch. I mean, how she would know this stuff? This is freaky. So when she explained everything to me scientifically, I fully understood. And I'm a science guy. I'm a science nerd, and my background is a lot of science and physics, like you've heard. But this was just too uncanny. But digging further into it, I found out that iridology is a well-known health modality around the world. Do you know that there's resident iridologists on staff in hospitals throughout Europe? For example, in Germany and Netherlands and Korea and China, there are iridologists in Israel. You have to be a medical doctor to be an iridologist in Russia. South America, Central America, it's a university degree to be an iridologist. In Australia, a lot of iridologists work in conjunction with doctors in their clinics, and the doctors fill prescriptions based on what the iridologist finds. How do you like that? Nowhere in North America. Nope. We just don't know what they are here in North America, in Canada and the US. And, the pharmaceutical companies like to test their drugs in reducing symptom rates. This is not a slam against them. This is just a fact that's happening. They want to test the validity of their drugs at reducing symptom rates. And so what they want to do is they gather their stats by giving certain drugs out to find out what percentage these things drop. So, and then once they get their stats, they can sell them to foreign markets by billions of dollars. Well, they don't like outside interference with us natural practitioners. And so it's not really well accepted here like it is in parts of the world. And I've studied from different practitioners, different teachers from all over the world. And I am still fascinated by it. And when I've been doing this for so long now, I mean, it's lost the honeymoon stage. I don't have to go around staring at everyone's eyes that I meet on the street. I don't do that. I don't carry my work around with me, but I'll sit at a party with somebody and I may be talking to them for 2 hours, but I haven't noticed yet. I'm looking in their eyes, but I'm not looking at it. I'm not analyzing a person. When you're a new iridologist, it's fascinating. You go to a screen and you're in a movie and you're seeing the big close-up of a movie actor's face on the screen, and you go, ooh, parasites, or ooh, hemorrhoids, whatever. But I mean, I don't do that now. So I want to have some fun with you, but I want to show you as a nutritionist, and some of you may not be nutritionists. I believe that most of you are that are on this webinar. You may be looking at this and saying, well, how's this going to benefit me? Well, I'm going to give you enough information tonight that you can actually, it can be quite impressive what you can actually show people. So I'm going to actually talk to you about some real basics. This is Iridology 101, scratch the surface of a scratch on a surface. I mean, really basic stuff here. But I'm going to go through a few things with you just to try to explain iridology a bit more. So let me just share my screen with you. There we go. And I think you all see that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, I think you all see that right now. Perfect. Okay. Now, if Anna, if you can't see my screen, there's nothing worse than doing one of these webinars and find out you can't see my screen, but I believe you can.
You are good.
That's right. Okay,
we can see the little things down the side. I don't know if you can possibly maybe exit out the bar down the left side.
Well, I can do better than that. I can do this. How's that?
Yes, that's perfect. Bam.
Technology. I used to work at a bank and I got fired because some lady walked up to me and asked me to check her balance. So I pushed her. I don't understand. Never mind. Dad joke. Boom. That didn't go over well with me. I didn't think it was that funny. I thought I'd just share that with you. So I'm going to talk to you first off about it. First off, it's called iridology and not iridology. Why? Because it's study the eye, not the ear. It's plural for iris is called irids. That's what most of us iridologists call it. It's the plural for iris, but the actual true name for it's called irides. And but most practitioners I know just refer to it as iris or irids for plural. Okay, so one of the first things we look at when we are doing an analysis with someone, by the way, so you can see on an eye, these millions of nerve fibers. There are 65% of all the nerves in the brain travel through the eyes, and they knit this, like spokes on a wheel, the whole iris. So you have blue and brown, and I'll show you all the different colors in a minute. But you can see all the tiny, tiny, tiny fibers are called trabecula, or trabeculae plural. And so what they are, they're actually not the nerves, they're conduits. And every one of those little tiny, tiny fine fibers is not a nerve itself. It's a conduit with 30 nerves in each one, approximately. So you can imagine how many nerves are actually making up the iris. And there are 4 layers to that iris too. That's just the top layer you're looking at. There's actually 4 layers. And so what happens is the nerves in the brain travel through the irids, and they knit these bundles, and then they leave the optic nerve, optic thalmi at the back of the eye. They drop down the spine, and they branch out to the different organs or tissues and come back up the spine and to the brain and through the eyes. So there's this continuous loop between the brain, the eyes, and the tissue in the body. So it's all connected through the nervous system. So anytime there's a problem somewhere in their body, whether it's subluxation, which is a pinching of a nerve, disease, atrophy, injury, inflammation, something happening within the body, it will mirror a tissue change in the eyes, and the fibers will start to split open. You can see one up here at around, if you're looking at clock, this is about 11:30. You can see a slight slip in the fiber, a split in the fiber here, and that's known as a lacuna in iridology speak. So that's iridology has a bunch of their own terminologies that we use. I'll go through that shortly. But one of the first things we look at, see how close these fibers are together, very tightly packed together. That's called a strong constitution, very, very, very strong. But this is a true blue iris. And a blue, so let me go through the colors with you. So there's true blue, there is true brown, and I mean brown is chocolate brown, dark chocolate brown, right through the whole eye. These are your typical Asian people, West Indian people, African people, people who have really, really, really dark, almost looks like a black iris. And then there's genetically mixed. And this is what makes up a lot of North Americans we have a mixture of all 3, but you'll see a lot of this in North America or in different parts of the world. What typically it is, it's a mixture between blue and brown. So that's called a mixed iris. And going back, I'll just go back a couple here. So when you're talking about a blue iris like this, you're looking at the actual stromal colors on the top here. But this lymphatic type eye is very prone to respiratory issues or weakness, and typically urogenital area like kidney or bladder or something like that. Very common. Now, it doesn't mean just because you have a blue eye that you're going to have those issues, but typically blue-eyed people are prone to more issues or some health issues involving the respiratory system or urogenital areas. The brown-eyed people typically, and again, this is not all of them, but typically brown-eyed people are what they're called, this is called a hematogenic eye in iridology. A typical hematogenic eye is a person who tends to have a lot of acidity build up in their body. And they're prone to having issues with eliminating malfunctions like colon, liver is hard to detoxify livers, more so with a brown eye. And there's this little brown spot you can see right there. It's called melanin, which I'll explain a little bit later, but it's indicative of bacteria that builds up in the liver. So typically brown-eyed people usually have a problem with more stagnant blood or toxicity in the blood, just because the liver is not filtering out as much as it could. They often have malfunctions with colon, not eliminating as much as it should. But again, if you're a brown-eyed person, you might be thinking, I have no problem eliminating, a lot. And let me explain what's normal, okay? There's something in the GI tract called gastrocolic reflex. So every time you eat something, the food goes into the stomach, which then sends a signal to the colon, and it starts the peristalsis, which is, I don't know how I can show you this. It's kind of like a snaking movement. I don't know how to do that very well, but it's a snaking movement causing the colon to start pushing one of them out. So one meal goes in, another one comes out, another one goes in. So every time you eat something, you're supposed to have an elimination sometime after that. So if you're having, let's say, what's the average North American eat in a day? Let's say 3 meals a day on average. That means the average North American should have 3 bowel movements a day, not 1. But if you ask the average North American, they say, well, I have 1 bowel movement a day, even though I'm having 3 meals a day. So it tends to slow down. And there's different reasons for that. I don't want to get into the whole idea of, or the whole topic of why colons aren't moving as well as they should. And by the way, your bowel movement should be from your wrist to your elbow 3 times a day, the thickness of 2 fingers. Some of you are thinking right now, what? I've never had that, but that's common. That's called, according to the peristalsis or the gastrocolic reflex. All right. So now the next one, is the genetically, or the mixed eye. So this is a cross between blue and brown. They can have issues with both the brown and blue in it. But very typical with this one, this person tends to have more blood sugar issues. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. When you look at the colors in your eye, you can see a little bit of yellow here. You can see some white. You can see orange in the eye. You get like a dark orange. There's a red, brown, and a brown color here. They all mean something. And it's really interesting to know if you've ever seen an iridologist or you've actually studied iridology, people in North America usually have taken some North American iridology course, and they basically look around the eye like in a clock, and they look at all the different zones, and they can tell, what area of the body might have a little bit more inflammation or more toxicity or more weakness or whatever. But I've studied a lot through European iridologists and Australian iridologists, and some really fascinating stuff has been introduced to North Americans. And I do my best to do that. I'm trying to bring more of the European and Australian iridology over to North America. And have been for some time, but, it's a slow process here because nobody really hears about iridology. But if you did, it's really exact. If you can look at someone's eye and you can tell them pretty much everything that's going on, as some people say, it's like you read my mail. I can't believe it. Well, we're not psychics. We are not people going to read your eyes or anything. No, we do an analysis of the eyes. We look at the nerve fibers in the blood vessels and how they correlate to different weaknesses or imbalances somewhere in the body. Okay, so now I'll move on here because I'll get into this a little bit later. This is a typical iridology chart. This is one that I put together in 2003. And I did this for the students who said, oh my gosh, there's so much for me to look at. How do I know what to look at first and second and third? There's just so much I don't know. So one of the students said, if there's some way you can teach us to do it in order, and so we'll know how to do it in a structured manner. So I came up with this chart, it's called the student or applied iridology chart. You can see up here in the left side, you see the different legend up here, the yellow, the orange, the green, the red zones. You would do those in order. And then after that, you can look at the lacuna, which is the splits in the fiber, which I will get into a little bit later. So, but this is typically a map of the eye. So every zone in the iris represents that particular corresponding area in the body. So if you're looking at the person's left eye, by the way, if you notice my R and my L are reversed, that's the person you're looking at staring back at you. That's their left and their right. So if you see left, this is their left eye over here, even though it's on your right side you're looking at. But everything that's on the left side of the body shows up in the left eye. If it's the right side of the body, it'll show up in the right eye. And so you can see if there's any kind of imbalance or tissue disturbance or, a split in the fibers or something like that, which I'll get into in a minute. Then we can pretty much tell the part of the body that's having the problem. But I'll get into that, as I said, a little bit later. Okay, so we start with a strong constitution, as I was talking about earlier. The stronger the fibers are, the more tight they are in the eye, that indicates or is indicative of a person with a strong constitution. What does that mean? A strong constitution, is somebody, it means the ability to hold on to vitamins, nutrients, and minerals. If someone has a strong constitution, they have a very good ability to hold on to vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. Another thing that constitutions tell you is, your potential for longevity. Well, if you have a strong constitution, the fibers are really tight together. So that also means because they're able to hold on to vitamins, nutrients, and minerals, they're able to resist sickness and disease a lot better because they're able to fight things off. So they tend to live a lot longer. Whereas if you have a person with a weak constitution, you see the difference here? You see how those fibers are all torn up. And this is how you're born. You're born with a strong constitution, you'll die with a strong constitution. If you're born with a weak constitution, you'll die with a weak constitution. There's no way you can change it. Well, that kind of sucks for a person with a weak constitution, right? Well, let's take a look at the strong constitution and say, well, this person, I'll go back here, this person would be comparable to oak. If you want to talk about a wood constitution, oak, real hard, real solid wood. So you make an oak table, very heavy, very solid wood. But this one would be like a balsa wood table or pine table, very loose, a lot of pockets between the fibers. It's a lighter wood. It's not as hardy. It dents easier, scratches and scuffs easier. So which table would last longer, an oak table or a pine table? Well, obviously you'd think an oak table would, but if you baby the pine table, it will last just as long as the oak table. Do you understand? So it'll last just as long but you really have to baby it. So the benefit of one of the benefits of iridology is to be able to look in the eye and say, you have a strong constitution, you have a weaker constitution. So the weaker constitution is going to need a lot more nurturing in their body. They're going to need a lot more nutrients, specifically minerals, to start building the body. Whereas a strong constitution, they don't seem to have the need to take in as much, and they can tend to abuse their bodies and get away with it. Not a weak constitution. They have to be very careful. A strong constitution, those are the kind of people who say, I never get sick. I don't know what your problem is. I never get sick. And a weak constitution, if someone walks by them with a cold, they end up usually getting it. So by knowing what your constitution is ahead of time, you can be better prepared and know why these things are happening. But the nice part about a weak constitution like this, they may be weak physically, but emotionally, they're very, what can I say? They're very deep emotionally, and they have a lot more charisma. This is, by the way, what I'm saying is based on Harvard Medical School. They did studies, 20,000 studies between, I think it was 1976 and 1994. 20,000. I could be wrong on those dates, but it's pretty close anyway. And they looked at 20,000 people, asked them lots of questions about their body, their likes, their dislikes, personality traits, whatever. And they entered them all in the computers. They lined up under these eye patterns. So we can actually, quite accurately, according to Harvard Medical School's stats, we can tell somebody's what their personality is like. Typically what side of the bed they like to sleep on, Seriously, it's really creepy. What else? Oh my gosh, there's so much. Who you're closer to, mother or father, what your work habits are like, what your, I guess, just every part of your life and your personality shows up in the eyes. And it was a fascinating study. And this is also what makes iridology very exciting. But true iridology doesn't really get in with the personalities as much as, let's say, this is called RAYID, RAYID, and we actually include that. I include that in the iridology course that I give. I actually talk about the personalities and the emotions and things like that that people go through. I think it's important to talk about emotions because the physical body starts changing. You start manifesting physiologically when you go through different emotions. So anyway, when I see a person with a weak constitution like this, I just know that, like I said, you're going to have to get a lot more minerals in your body and just make sure when they're built up and keep building and building and building, they'll last. They can easily go over 100 years of age, but you have to really baby them. The strong constitutions, these people can easily live into their 90s, 100 years of age, and without trying as much. But the strong constitutions tend not to be able to handle stress as much as a weak constitution. This is another strength that the weak constitutions have, is they can handle strength. If you had a person with a weak constitution and you put them in the most stressful environment, they'd be sitting there having a great old time working. Whereas the person with a strong constitution may just shatter and fall apart very easily. They can't handle stress like a weak constitution can. So you're not doomed if you have a weak constitution. You're very rich in personality and emotions, and you can handle stress. Whereas the strong constitutions, they can fight off sickness and disease much better. Sickness and disease, they can tend to stand for long periods of time, never get tired. Weak constitutions tend to get tired. They need to sit down, take breaks a lot. But the strong constitutions, they're just really healthy and they have a easy potential for longevity. Okay, so let's move on here. Now, here's some basic iris markings that I want to show you. Now, you'll see open and closed lacunae. A lacuna is a split in the fiber. Lacunae is plural. You can see them here. See that when the fibers, when something happens inside the body and there starts to become an imbalance in an area, the fibers start to split open like this. They just split either like this or this. And when you see the fibers open on one end like this, see it's closed here and it's open here, that's indicative of an open lacuna. An open lacuna is something that you have inherited in your lifetime, or you're not inherited, you've acquired this in your lifetime. Whereas a closed lacuna, like you'll see here, and maybe this one here, this is closed. That is a sign that you've inherited that. Okay, your ancestors passed it down to you. There's a weakness in someone's body, and you tend to have that weakness inbred into you when you're born. So that's a lot how we can tell by looking at somebody if something has happened in your lifetime, or it was in your lineage or something, and then you got it. Something is called a miasm. My great-great-great-grandfather had tuberculosis, let's say, and it damaged his lungs. So now all his offspring have weakness in the lungs. And so you look over the lung area and say, oh yeah, well, there's a weakness in the lung area. So, but it's inherited because it's closed. So that's one thing you can look at. So quickly looking in an eye, I can tell what typical things have happened in their lifetime that they've developed. Like, for example, this person was not born with a weak thyroid, but you see they've acquired a weak thyroid in their lifetime, or an imbalance in their thyroid, we should say, because we're not supposed to diagnose or prescribe anything. In European iridology, they'll diagnose quite often because you're working in hospitals. But in North America, we're not really legally allowed to diagnose. And we're not going to name any diseases either. We're just saying, well, here's an imbalance in the thyroid area right now. It's not functioning to the perfection which it should be functioning. And so we can look up here in the neck and shoulder over here. There's an issue here. So we just basically would look at that pattern. That was the pattern I was showing you earlier here. Rather than me flip back to it, there's the iris. So we just look on the chart and we can see what the issue is. All right. So that's the difference between an open and a closed. Open, that's acquired in your lifetime. Closed means you've inherited that. All right. Now there's the chart again. I didn't realize I had another one on here, but you could see where that person had a split in their thyroid, the zone right there for the thyroid, and also the neck and shoulders here. Okay. So, anyway, that was just a quick reference for a chart. Now, I want to show you some other things. These are hyperpigmentations. You might have noticed by looking in certain people's eyes, they might have these little brown spots. Here's a brown spot, little brown spot like this, but there's different colors in the eye. So I'm going to explain them in this one. But the hyperpigmentation in these little brown spots or orange spots, those are indicative of drug deposits. North Americans refer to these as PSORA, P-S-O-R-A. In the new terminology for those is called hyperpigmentations. Iridologists around the world are trying to come up with the same lingo, so they're all in the same. They're in the same agreement with all the same things. So we now have tried to change some of these names. So there's hyperpigmentation. Now, so it means a chemical deposit. And this is interesting too, according to Harvard Medical School study I told you, when they looked at that and they said, well, okay, that there's chemical deposits in the body, but it typically means that this person here has control issues. They love control. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they are a control freak. It means they just love to control. It might be not, I don't want to control you per se. I want to control me and the way I come across, the way I do my work, my perception. I want to make sure that people don't read me the wrong way. So you try to control your actions and your emotions and things like that. So it could be that as well. But it could be, if this is a husband and wife, maybe the wife or the husband is more controlling. But the more dots you have, according to Harvard Medical School, the more control that this person likes to have. In other words, you don't want to take a person like this and tell them, you need to do this, you need to do this, because they like to be in control, you see. Now, let's go through some of these colors. I showed you white earlier, but I'm going to show you a little bit later. But when I see yellow in an eye, like you can see in here, there's little smudges of yellow in here. Now, those are toxins in the body. The orange you're looking at is toxins. The brown and the red-brown you're seeing are toxins in the body. And then they're from different toxins that go into the body. Now, North American iridologists will find this fascinating. They may call it something else like sulfur or whatever, but I'm going to tell you, when you have toxins in the body, they don't go in colored. They're not yellow. They're not orange. They're not brown. They're clear or cloudy. But what changes the color are different emotions we go through. So every time we go through a different emotion, there's a part of the brain called the hypothalamus that releases these chemicals called neuropeptides. And when the neuropeptides mix with the toxins, that actually there's a chemical reaction that changes the color of the toxins. So we can basically tell the underlying emotion that caused that by the color. So let's go through, give you an example here. So if I see this yellow, I'm looking down around 6, 7 o'clock here. Remember, when I say 6 or 7 o'clock, I'm talking about a clock. Here's 12, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, whatever. If for the younger ones, you probably wouldn't, you're just looking at a digital clock. But I'm talking for the older ones of us that can look at an old analog clock with the dials on it, and we can tell what that is. But see, the yellow here, that's a person who tends to have a lot of worry, fear, concern, anxiety. Now, if I take a yellow haze and I put it over top of a blue eye, what color do I get? Green, right? So if I put a yellow toxin over a blue eye, I get green. That's what a green eye is. There's no such thing as a genetically green eye. What? I was born with the green eye. No, you were born with the blue eye like everybody else is. Even everybody in Asia is born with a dark, dark blue eye. It looks so blue, it almost looks black. But genetically, it starts changing color and it goes blue, or it goes brown, or it goes more of a hazel color or a green color, whatever. But that happens as we get older and we start experiencing different emotions. So if a child has toxic, and not a lot of children, babies are toxic, but they pick it up from the mother in the womb. If she's eating a lot of things she shouldn't be eating, the toxins go into the baby. And so they're existing in the body. So when the baby starts experiencing things like fear and worry and concern and anxiety and mommy's not around, the neuropeptides are producing this, the hypothalamus producing the neuropeptides. And when they mix with the toxins, it starts turning it yellow. Now, so we can start seeing more yellow or greenish color to certain eyes. Now, that same neuropeptide that turns that toxin yellow will start to affect the adrenal glands. So when we look at this, I can say, well, physiologically, it means there's an adrenal gland imbalance. There's too much stress on the adrenals. But it also means you tend to have fear, worry, concern, or anxiety. And you should see the look on people's face when you tell them this. Like, how did you know that? It's not rocket science when you actually get into this. Now, let's look at another color. There's a bright orange color. I'm looking for more of a pumpkin orange. If it's a little like a pumpkin orange color, that would be indicative of a person who went through a recent grieving period. Go through grief, different neuropeptides mixed this time with the toxins and changes it bright orange. Now, you can look at when it's a real bright orange, it looks like someone's had some kind of a grieving period within the last year. Now, the longer that grief sets in and that toxin stays there, it tends to go a darker orange. And so when you start seeing a darker orange color, like right here at 6 o'clock, that's more of a long-term lack of joy. But that same neuropeptide that turned that orange affects the pancreas. All right. So then we can start seeing, issues with the pancreas. So now we've got adrenals yellow, pancreas orange. When I start seeing red-brown, I saw a red-brown issue. There's a red-brown right here. That's more of a spleen issue physiologically, but it means I've got some depression or resentment issues. If you see brown here, that's more of indicative anger, and that it starts to affect the liver. So the emotion tends to affect the liver, and we think it's due to the neuropeptide. We're not quite sure. It's kind of a black box in science. We really don't know how it happens. We just know it's linked. So brown, not a brown eye, like I saw earlier, like we showed you earlier. This is brown on an eye. That tends to represent you've got more anger issues. Okay, so let's move on. A spastic bowel. You can see how this is a jagged line that goes around here. I'm drawing it out here for you. It should be fairly round, goes around the eye, and it should be 1/3 of the way out from the pupil to the edge of the iris. So this is over here. It's halfway at least. And then some of them, look at this one, it's pulled right in close like that. So this indicates the bowel. This is the outline of the bowel. It's called the collarette, but it's the central nervous system as well. But it also represents the outside of the bowel. So or the colon. So when the colon tends to shoot out like this, it shows that's the bowel's doing this. It's ballooning out like that. When it tends to pull in sharp like this and then go back out, or here, it's going along, pulls in really quickly and goes back out again like that. So when you see it pull in quickly, that's like the colon moving along and it goes pinch like this and moves out again. So every time you see it pull in, that means the bowel's going pinch at that spot. And when you see it going out here on this side, it's pinch and it balloons out like that. So you can actually draw out a person's colon by looking at their eyes. It's quite interesting. So you can understand why this person came in, why they have gut problems, why they have pain and stomach aches and things like that. So that's very typical. I want you to also look at this white halo around the pupil. See that? Not every eye has that. When you see that halo, that's indicative of a stomach, and the pH or the acidity in that stomach is thrown off. This happens to be an overacid stomach, or a hyperacidic stomach, where you get some that are they're less bright than that. It's more of a pale halo, and that means an underacid, which I'm going to show you in a minute here. I'm just going to move on so we're not taking too much time. The other one I want to show you, the other color, because we were talking about colors. See all the white in the eye, or the gray, it makes it look gray because you're putting it, this is a blue eye, and putting a lot of gray fiber over top of it. So the gray is indicative of a lot of acidity in the body. This is very typical for people who come in with arthritis or arthritic conditions, inflammatory conditions in the body. And but Harvard Medical School looks at this and said, well, that's also to do with a personality type. This person, they tend to have a lot of, they're more hardened from life. They have unforgiveness issues, typically. So you've been hurt enough, so you tend to harden. And when you're under a lot of stress, your body actually produces a fair amount of acidity, and it sets into the tissues, and the muscles tighten around them. They hold on to them. And this is what causes muscles to get very stiff and tight. That is very typical of this person here. But underneath in the background, subconsciously, they may be having some unforgiveness issues from many, many years ago, but they're still hanging on to that. And this is what you see with a typical person with, unforgiveness issue. They're hardened from life. Typically all this white. That's what I just wanted to show you there. Let's not go on too long with that. This is a prolapsus of the bowel. I want to show you this. See this? I said it was fairly round, and then it comes up here and then just cuts straight across like that. See, when it's doing that, that's the outline of the colon. And the colon typically, on one side, I'll show you here. No, I don't have the colon chart here, but typically on one side, you got the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid. But when you see, this should be fairly round like this. But the fact that it's cut across, showing me that the sigmoid is not going across now. It's sagging down like this. It's drooping way down, and it starts resting on other organs. On females, it tends to rest on their bladder, and which pushes down on the bladder and pushes down on the uterus. And over time, it can actually start pushing the uterus out through the vagina. And I've known several elderly women that have to keep reaching in and pushing it back up because the uterus is prolapsed. But that's a sign, or it's indicative of a heavy colon that's resting upon that. They say the average 45-year-old has another 25 pounds in their colon of fecal matter that has not been released yet. It's true. So it starts to build up in there. Well, you think about it. If you're eating 3 meals a day and having 1 bowel movement a day, it starts building up over the time, and it starts building up and building up and building up. Now, there's other areas where your body can eliminate through the kidneys, the skin, the respiratory, but still there's a lot of heavy sludge and toxicity in the feces that are built up in there. It can actually cause a lot of weight. So they say by the time you're 45 years of age, you have about 15 to 20 pounds. Sorry if I'm using that instead of the kilos, probably half of that, of fecal matter in the colon. And so the gravity pulls that down, and that's what's happening. If it's a man, when that transverse colon rests on the prostate, it tends to enlarge the prostate. Men start getting prostate issues. One of the typical questions I ask a person when I see this, I say, do you have a problem driving long periods of time in the car? Oh yeah, I have to keep stopping and go in the bathroom. Yeah, every little bump, that colon is sitting on top of the bladder going bump, 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 bump. And yeah, they have to keep going to the washroom. It's typical what happens is many people have to just run out and go and look in the mirror after I do this talk because they want to see if they can see any of these signs. That's totally normal. I understand if you want to do that. Now, I want to show you a few things. This is called venous congestion. I don't want to go too long and way over my time. Now, the blue hue here is indicative of a person who has low iron. That's called venous congestion in iridology speak. So the blue hue around the eye here, it's almost seems like the blue is bleeding into the white of the eye, the sclera, but it's actually not. This is called a lunula in iridology. This lunula is indicative of a person with they're just low iron levels. They don't have enough circulating iron in their body. And there's something else too. It's very interesting that I'm starting to notice. Scientists are doing a lot more studies with 5G technology. Now, I'm not making any claims. I'm just telling you what some of the research I've been reading. And they're saying that 5G is actually starting to affect oxygen molecules in our atmosphere. And other people say, that's ridiculous. 5G will not penetrate the body. It will not go into the body. That's ridiculous. We're not talking about the body. We're talking about the atmosphere. And what it's tending to do is it's changing. See, every molecule in the universe has either a positive or a negative charge. So if you look at two magnets, then when they come together, here's magnets right here. If I turn this over and I put this one next to this, see how it attracts to it? Okay, I'll do that again. Whoops. Okay, so if I hold it here, it pulls it upwards. So let's say that one magnet is a receptor site in the lung, and the bottom one is oxygen. So when they come close, they attract. But what 5G is, what the scientists are saying, that 5G is actually reversing the polarity on a lot of the oxygen molecules that are out there. So what normally would attract is now detracting. See, it's pushing away from it. And so you're not absorbing as much oxygen as you should be. And what I'm seeing as a practitioner in here, a lot of people are coming in lately going, oh, I feel like I seem to be out of breath a lot. I'm short of breath. I'm seeing a lot of this, a plethora of people coming in here with this problem with short of breath. I don't know what it is. I just can't seem to get enough oxygen sometimes. And that's a lot of people, not everybody. And the same people tell me, and I don't have very good sleep either. So what I think's happening, I'm postulating this, but what could be happening is if the oxygen is changed and your body's not absorbing it as much, then typically the heart has to pump harder to get more blood around. What tells the heart to pump harder? The adrenals, they release adrenaline and they get your heart pumping faster to get more oxygen around. Now, try to go to sleep with a whole bunch of adrenaline pumping through your veins. Can't sleep. And I'm restless sleep. I'm tossing, I'm turning. And this is what's happening with a lot of people. Why? Because they're not getting enough oxygen. And so this is not all cases of insomnia. According to Sleep Country, you don't have a Sleep Country mattress. There's a little bit more to it than that. Okay. So there's a lot of things out there, but we're noticing this one lately. And the more 5G that pops up, I'm getting more and more patients coming in here with that same issue. So when you start seeing a blue hue, especially in the eyes out here, I've got another picture of it. It's a little bit, you can see it a little bit easier out here. When you get a bluish tinge to the white of the eye called a sclera, that's usually of a person who's not getting enough oxygen. So you can tell them usually by looking at their eye, just even 2-3 feet away, looking at their eye and say, it's kind of a bluish hue to the whites of their eyes. And that's indicative they're not getting enough oxygen. Maybe they're not breathing, they're a shallow breather or something, or it could be the fact that they're, affected by the oxygen from the 5G. Now, again, I'm postulating that. I don't know that for sure, but this has come up in quite a few studies that they're doing out there. Arcus lipoides is another term. North American iridologists refer to this as Arcus senilis. It sounds like senile or senility. All it really basically is this is hardening of the arteries. If you see this cap on the top of the eye, and you can see this from like a foot away if you're looking at someone's eye. But if you see that white cap on the top of the eye, that's showing you that there's hardening of the arteries to the head. This is the head area between 11 and 1, right in this area here. Okay, so when this starts getting hardening here, you're not getting enough oxygen to the brain and you start forgetting everything. This poor person here can hide their own Easter eggs, if you know what I mean. So they're I can't remember anything. I walk in. This doesn't mean Alzheimer's. This means, I just walked in here and I can't remember what I came in here for. I know it's coming in for something, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was just saying something. What was I saying? Or sorry, what's that number again? That kind of thing. So if you're noticing that, doesn't mean you have Alzheimer's. Chances are you're just not getting enough blood flow to the brain. But a quick look in the eye would tell us what it is. It could be a calcium imbalance. It's hardening the arteries. It could be fats and oils or cholesterol that are plugging that. So we can tell by looking in the eyes. I'd love to be able to teach you all this tonight, but I can't because I'm limited on my time. But in the iridology training we do at IHN, well, actually we do it online like this. The course is actually done online. And the students actually like it online too. They don't have to drive to the course necessarily, but they are to a building, but they can do it online from their comfort of their own home. So now let me show you another one here. This is when that ring goes the whole way around. It's not just on the top of the head, it's the whole way around. And so this is very typical. Don't look at the headline here. I want to show you something else. The ring here. So when I see this ring here, that means hardening of the hardening of the arteries. And so we'll be able to tell whether it's from calcium or if it's a cholesterol issue. But the one that I wanted to show you here is these colors. See this brown right here? There's brown right there and a little brown spot here. That's an indication of liver hardening. There's actually bacteria in the liver that's actually causing that. Is it a serious problem? No, not at this stage. It's not a serious problem at all. And you can quite often see this with a hematogenic eye or a true brown eye. A lot of people with these dark brown eyes, typically, I see this a lot with a lot of Black people. They have a lot of brown in the actual white of the eye. And that doesn't mean they have a diseased liver or something like that. Everybody has their own strengths. They all have their own weaknesses. That just is very typical of a brown eye. They tend to get this melanin staining on the actual white of the eye, meaning that the liver is a little toxic and they have a little bit of bacteria built up. And again, that you can have a blue eye, you can be a Caucasian white person with a blue eye and still have that brown on there. But it happens more often with more brown eyes than it does blue. That's all it means. So just showing little different things that we can see in the eye and what it actually means. So a lot of people over their years have been looking at their own eye and saying, what's this? What's this? What's this mean? What's this spot? And so I'm just kind of showing you what some of these things mean. Now, here's a person with more of a bluish hue to their sclera down here. See that off to the right? That's a person that could be affected by they're not getting enough oxygen, right? For the reasons I mentioned earlier. So, but the one that I want to show you right here is called the scurf rim. See that dark rim? Makes a really pretty eye. This is your typical mascara models. They always take these pictures, these beautiful models, these gorgeous eyes, but they tend to have this dark ring around there because it makes a real pretty eye. But what it really means to us iridologists, when I see that dark ring, that's the part of the body that represents skin. So that means a toxic or a weakened skin area. Now, if I were to look at her face, she's beautiful. She's got beautifully skinned baby skin. But when it's a weaker area, that means as she gets older, that's one of the first things that's going to age and she's going to get more wrinkles and whatever. Now, what we have seen, Harvard Medical School did some studies on this. This does not necessarily mean that, your skin is going to all sag and drop off your body, anything like that. No. But according to Harvard Medical School, when they did the RAYD, RAYID model, that's indicative of a person who has a low self-esteem or low self-worth, believe it or not. You wouldn't think supermodels would have a low self-esteem or low self-worth, poor self-worth. So, but that's typically what that means. And I've heard people, you can do things to change by scrub and skin brushing and brush upwards towards the heart and whatever. In my years I've been in practice, I've seen that disappear when a person works on their self-esteem. If they really work on their self-esteem, self-worth, that dark ring around the outside tends to disappear. So if you ever notice what that beautiful ring is, and it's very typical in children. Children have that dark ring around their eye. Not necessarily in their case, so they have a low self-esteem. It just means their skin is still developing. It's still growing. It's, you know what I mean? So when you're a full-grown adult and you still have that ring, well, that usually isn't, it means you're still struggling with self-esteem issues. Okay, now, this is one that everybody wants to jump up from this and go look in the bathroom mirror and look at their eyes, because these are little lines. You see these lines like spokes on a wheel, and this is like or rays of a sun. So in North American, this is called radii solaris, like rays of the sun. A radius is a line starting from the middle and it radiates out through, towards the end of the circle. But there's many radii is plural for radius. So there's many. And it's not, so the new iridology term is called radiofurrows, and it's indicative of a slow-moving toxic colon, and it's also a potential for parasite infestation in the colon. So the longer you're holding on to toxins, the more breeding ground you provide for parasites in your body. So a lot of iridologists, layman iridologists, look at this and say, oh, it means you got parasites. No. This person may have just done a 1-month parasite cleanse and there's no parasites anywhere in their body. So the lines don't represent parasites. They represent areas where parasites would love to live in. But if you've done a parasite cleanse, they're out. But it means a slow-moving toxic colon and indicative of areas where there's toxins. So it's actually leading into these areas. So everywhere you see these dark areas, these furrows, they're going into that area. That means it's affecting that area of the body. So if a line goes into one area of the body, it can start affecting it, slowing that area of the body down, or causing more health problems in that particular area. All right. So that's a cool one I want to throw in. Here's another one, lymphatic tophi. I want to speed this up because I'm kind of near my time here. But these little dots here are indicative of clogged lymph nodes. When the doctor comes, they feel your glands like this, they're feeling the lymph nodes. And but when we see these dots here, that tells us that this person physiologically means they're very prone to ear, nose, and throat irritations. You're very prone to allergies to dust and pollens and molds and things like that, and danders. And if you ask anybody that has these, I ask them, do you have to blow your nose? Oh yeah, every morning I have to blow my nose because my nose is congested first thing in the morning. My sinuses are running. Now, according to Rayed, the model, or talked about with Harvard Medical School, this person tends to be a peacekeeper. They like to keep the peace. I don't think she meant it that way. I think you're being a little sensitive. Maybe you were just in a bad mood that day, you didn't eat, and you're kind of hangry, whatever. And so this person tends to be the middle person, trying to keep the peace. Just calm down, guys, make up, kiss and make up. So that's this person here. And that was a study over, like I said, 20 years. And they tend to be idealists. This would be the ideal mate. This would be the ideal career. This is how I like my house. This is how everything should look. So you have all these ideals. So it's quite an interesting, it's kind of a fun topic to get into when you talk about personalities. This is another one called contraction furrows, not these radio furrows. I'm talking these ones, these lines. This is a 9-year-old child that came to see me. Now, the more lines you have in a row, this person's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines in a row. What happens is when the body is under was holding a lot of acidity, everything gets very tight and it compresses and it buckles the fibers like this. They buckle. And so this is what's happening here. And it means the person's under a tremendous amount of stress, but they tend to hold it all in. And they're holding the stress in, but their acid builds up in their body and it's causing everything to tighten up. All the muscles, everything compresses. And so the more rings you have, the closer you are to a nervous breakdown. So this child is 9. If you have 4 or 5 in a row, you're very close to having an emotional or mental breakdown. This child has 9. She sat here saying, "Are you going to use needles? I don't like needles. Do you have elevators in this building? I get really freaked out with elevators. I don't like elevators." It's like, and it's constantly, this kid's just constantly worrying. Kid, take a chill pill, for heaven's sakes. Let's calm down, relax. But she lives on fear. And so the poor thing, she needs a lot of calcium. She needs a lot of magnesium to relax it, like a magnesium bisglycinate or something like that, to relax the body and relax the muscles. And she would also benefit from B vitamins, like a B complex to support the nervous system. So a person like this, I would get B vitamins and magnesium for sure. Okay. Here's a very pale hill I was talking about earlier. This is an under acid stomach. See? So they're going to get a lot of gas and bloating, certain things they eat. Okay. The brighter halo would be an over acid stomach, more belching. You can get heartburn and indigestion whether you have an over acid stomach or under acid stomach. So if you're looking in someone's eye, you can see this from 1-2 feet away. If they got a white area around their pupil, you know their stomach acid is thrown off. Okay, but it's important to know if I have someone with a high stomach acid like this, excuse me, I don't want to give them protein protein digestive aid like hydrochloric acid or something. I don't want to increase their stomach acid. They'll be cursing you because they're going to be in so much pain. If I suggest a person with an underacid stomach take protein digestive aids, hydrochloric acid, something to build it up, like apple cider vinegar or something, they're going to love you because now all of a sudden they're digesting everything really well. It's wonderful to look in an eye and tell them, no, you need this or whatever. Iridology is such a great tool when you're dealing with nutrition. Nutritionists and iridologists it's a perfect marriage to go together because you can really help people by just looking at it really quickly and say, I'm going to work on this for you. Or I know how much you should be eating, how many meals you should have, how well you digest those meals, how well you take energy from that, or you have a poor use of energy from your food or whatever. So it's really great to have. Another thing to look at real quick, adrenal exhaustion. The larger the pupil, the more their adrenal glands are exhausted. Now, this person could be corked out on drugs, or they could be just over a prolonged period of stress for a long period of time. It tends to exhaust their adrenal glands and the pupils open right up. So this is also indicative of a person who has Epstein-Barr virus in their body when you have a large pupil like that. And probably an overgrowth of yeast like Candida albicans. So those are some things you look at. You look at someone's eyes and say, let's test you. I'm going to see if you need to do a yeast cleanse or not. But you definitely need to do something to build up your adrenals. Okay, but you also can tell adrenals are affected because of the yellow. Remember I said earlier, when you see yellow color in an eye, that's from fear, worry, concern, anxiety. So that affects the adrenal glands, and that's what you're looking at. Okay, now this is an overstressed person, very small pupil. It always starts smaller before it gets exhausted and blows up. But when you're under heavy stress and you tend to hold everything in, your pupil gets really small and tiny like this. This is a really, I don't know how to say this with any kind of tact. This person is so stressed, you could take a lump of coal and put it between their butt cheeks in the morning, and it would be a diamond by the afternoon. Sorry, I couldn't resist. They're so tense and so stressed. And so they're under so much pressure. And that's what this poor person is, just tight. You can tell that just by looking at the pupil. And this is the acidic condition I told you about, a lot of acid. They have a lot of unforgiveness issues as well when you see a lot of the white like that. Pretty icy blue eyes, but it usually means you got some unforgiveness issues or hardened from life. Okay, a couple more. Sugar metabolism balance. When you see a lot of orange in the eye, orange or yellow, you know this person is not able to metabolize sugar. So understand that. This person's going to crave sugar things, or they're going to crave pastas or breads and things like that. Here's another indication. If you get you pull their eyelid up like this and have them look down. You can look at the top of the eye. You see these little bruises at the end of blood vessels. That's a sugar metabolism imbalance. You can actually see if someone's actually metabolizing sugar or not. And when you get the person, like I was saying earlier, with all this white in the eye, it's a lot of gray color, whitish color over the eye, making like an icy blue eye. You know, they are also going to have a problem with wheat or dairy. They tend to have wheat or dairy allergies. When you see the lighter, the bluer, the whiter the eye, the more wheat and dairy allergies they have. And so there's more of a need for metabolism. They're not metabolizing calcium properly. So I recommend this person, rather than taking calcium, I'd rather give them vitamin D3 and K2. And they work together very well, D3, K2. This is a problem with fat metabolism. I showed you this ring earlier on an eye, but if you see this blob of fat called a pinguicula, that's what it's called. This pinguicula on the sclera, if you see that and this white eye, a white ring around the eye, the opaque ring, you know that their cholesterol is high. If you see a person with this vertical line in the left eye, so they'd have to look over to the right, and you're looking in the sclera, and there's this red line that goes up like this. This is also indicative of a person who's prone to, it's cardiac infarct diathesis, a potential for cardiac arrest. And I had a person, this was actually the person here, and I looked in his eye and I said, I want you to go see a doctor right away for this. And he ignored me, and he wouldn't, he's such a procrastinator. We came to see me about 3 weeks later, and I asked him, did you see a doctor? He says, no, but I want to ask you something. When I used to walk about 50 feet, and then I get this aching in my teeth and my jaw, and my arm would go numb. And I'd stop and it would go away, and then I'd walk again and it would start hurting. Now I find I wake up like that with my teeth and my jaw aching. And I said, get out of here, out now, go see a doctor. So we went to see the doctor, had to go to a hospital just to get checked. And they checked him and they said, I don't know how to tell you this. You're about to have a massive heart attack any hour now. So they did an open heart surgery and cleared him out. And he's just happy to be alive. Now he calls me Doctor or Uncle Rob, and he's in his 70s, but he calls me Uncle Rob just because he's so thankful to be alive. I guess he just calls me Uncle Rob for some reason. Anyway, so if you see that in the right eye or the left eye, the left lateral sclera, so a vertical line like that, it usually indicates as an issue with heart or potential heart issue. They should go see their doctor. If you see it in the right side, a vertical in the right eye, so you have to get them to look to the left and look here, that means they're apoplexy diathesis or potential for stroke. Okay. So it doesn't mean they're going to have one, but there's this potential, so they should get it checked out. Okay. So that's the talk. I want to just talk to you about a few things and few colors you can see. Again, that's Iridology 101. So we do actually do training in IHN. I love IHN. I've been working with them now. I think I'm going on 10 years. I think this is going to be my 10th year of teaching for IHN. And I love Iridology. And I love teaching it to IHN students because they grasp nutrition really well. And so they're well-trained practitioners. My hat's off to all you guys who are trained at IHN. So, but we do that. Now I'm going to put that back to Anna, and she can tell you a little bit more now. So
thanks, Robert. That was fantastic as always, even after my third time. It's just so great to hear you go over all those things. I love it. And some of those shapes of the eyes and the colors, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. Like the weaves and the lacunae, right? I love that word, lacunae. That's so right. I love that. I love how you're able to peg emotions and characteristics, personality characteristics related to it. I mean, it's just amazing. You can't hide from the body.
I can't, but it's so fascinating. I once dated a girl who was wall-eyed, one eye sticking out. But we broke that relationship up because we could never see eye to eye. I think she was seeing someone on the side anyway. I'm sorry.
Oh,
That's
you're terrible.
bad joke. That's so bad. I'm sorry. No, but yeah, it's fascinating. I really enjoy it. And it was always
It's wonderful. It's always so good.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, they're laughing. So we have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So my first question here from Shelley. Can you have one eye with a weak constitution and the other with a strong constitution?
Can you?
Yes. Can you?
I've never seen it. I've never seen it. Now, you might have one eye with some lacuna in it, which doesn't mean the whole eye, the iris is weak. It just means you've got more lacuna on that, meaning there's more weakness on one side of the body. But it doesn't mean that your whole constitution is weak. So no, again, so what you're looking at, if you see one with a lot of lacuna in one eye and not so much the other, again, it just means there's more weakness on one side of the body than the other, but it doesn't mean your constitution is weak.
Okay. All right. From it is a good question. Jessica, she says, is it hard to see these toxins on a dark brown eye, or is it more difficult to see items? Is it more difficult?
Well, no. When you have a dark brown eye, it's more difficult to see, but we have a proper light. Like I've got something here. It's a little scope worth about $50. And it would actually, I just hold it up to the eye and it lights it up really well. And I can see different colors over top of the brown. I can see if there's orange in the eye. I can see if there's a brown toxin on top of a brown eye because they're different colors. So you can, if you have the right light to see that. I also have a proper camera. You don't see it in this picture here, but I do have a camera that actually lights it up really well and blows your eye up really big on my computer screen so you can see all the different colors over top of the brown eye.
Yeah, I remember when I came to see you. Yeah. Sorry. I remember when I came to see you and you had both my eyes like huge on your computer screen. And then you show me like the different colors and different etchings of what was going on. So is that, excuse me. So for like being in practice, like if it, as students take this Con Ed course, what kind you said you've got the little $50 magnifying tool. Are there what do you need in order to be able to see the eye properly to make an analysis?
Well, you should have a chart. There's a chart worth about $20 here. Yeah. And this is a desk chart.
Absolutely.
You can put it on the wall, or you can leave it on the desk in front of you. Here's another chart that I recommend people have. It's an European constitutional chart. It talks about the different colors, the different markings. So there's 11 different constitution types in the world. They make up the whole earth. And you can tell by each one what all their strengths and weaknesses are for each one. So that's a good one to have. And it tells about them on the back. Okay. So that's a really good one to have. So there's really not a lot. I recommend, 2, maybe 3 charts. And then a scope was worth $50. So there's not a lot of outlay.
What about the camera? Like, do we need a special type of, you just use our phone camera, or like, how would that work?
Some people are coming up with some really awesome pictures from a phone. And the better their technology is getting for cameras on phones, you can actually take some pretty good ones. I recommend that if you're just starting. You can do that with camera, but you have to hold it really still. You have to make sure there's not a window behind you so it's all glaring on their eyes, because then all you see is glare. But if you have a camera, you take a picture about 1 foot away and go flash with a flash on, and that takes a fairly good picture, but you have to take a lot of them. But as you get more professional, if you want to turn this into a profession and open a practice in this, I would recommend you get a camera. Cameras you can get for about $3,500 to $4,000, something like that. And the best on the market, really good quality cameras that you can blow up maybe 100 times 100 times magnification. So yeah. So if you really wanted to get into it a little bit more, then you can put more money into it, but it pays you back.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. It's okay, from Mariana. Have you heard of bear tracts? What does it mean when you have that?
Bear tracts, There's a lot of different countries that come up with different things. I know the shoe lacuna. I've never heard of bear tracts, but the shoe actually looks like the main part of the shoe and a heel. And if you see that, that means kidney weakness. But bear tracts itself, I'd actually have to see it because that's not a commonly used name for the shape of a lacuna. So I'm not familiar with that terminology, actually.
Okay. From Jessica, do the markings on the eye change as the person heals with holistic or pharmaceutical treatments? Is this how you would measure a client is doing well on their protocols? Good question.
Actually, the frustrating part is the actual lacuna. Once they're there permanently. It's like if I take a spike and I drive it and I hammer it into the wall, oh, what are you doing in my wall? Okay, I'll take it out. So I remove the problem, but the scar is still there on the actual eye, the wall there's a big hole in the wall. It's the same with this. When you develop a weakness in the body, they never close up and heal. But we do see indication lines. They're called healing lines that the body's healing it. And there's no symptoms. So all my symptoms are gone in that area because I can see that white area, which means the body's encapsulated and healed it. However, the lacuna, the split in the fiber will still be there. So there are indications to actually show they've actually healed. And then you ask them questions, they say, no, all the symptoms are gone now. However, but it also serves as a nemesis, or it's kind of a sign saying, if you go back to that old lifestyle you had before that caused the weakness, it'll come back again. So that's an area of weakness in the body, but you can still support it with lots of good, healthy nutrition and nutrients. And you can actually, all your symptoms disappear and you'll never have a problem. Let's say it's kidney. But if you go back to really poor eating habits, eating a lot of sugar and whatever, you can develop a kidney damage again and a weakness.
Okay.
So if that makes sense.
Excuse me. You spoke about the brown spots in the iris, but what about brown spots in the white of the eye near the iris? Are those the same?
No. The ones that are in the sclera, that's called melanin. And that's what we showed about earlier. They've shown actually big brown spots or little tiny spots, but those are indicative of hardening. It's called liver. It's a liver hardening sign called melanin, and it indicates that you have bacteria in the liver. It's not anything to worry about. It just means, hey, time to do a liver cleanse. That's all it's saying. But it's not the same. When you see them on top of the actual iris, that means you have chemical deposits from maybe drugs or medications you've had in the past.
Okay.
They're permanently stained. You always have them, so they don't go away. They may fade a little bit, but you'll always have them on the iris. But they can actually go away on the sclera. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, from Rohia, what if a person has a brown spot in the white of the eye? Can you?
That's the same thing.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
That's the melanin. Yeah.
And I have one more question. If you have green eyes, can you ever address toxins to the point that your eyes would return to blue?
Mm-hmm. Happens all the time. You green-eyed people who are listening to me now, you'll find your eyes get much greener when you're crying or you're really worrying about something, going through a lot of stressful event. Your eyes will get very, very, very green. So when you deal with those stress and the toxins and they come out, your eye will go a lot bluer. But if you also have to deal with the emotion of fear and worry and anxiety. And if you ever get to that point, tell us all, then you'll meet multimillionaire. If you can figure out how to stop people from worrying, but there are ways you can reduce it and you can go from a really, really green eye to a blue eye. I actually did that with a person who had a nice dark brown eye, and I put her on a real cleanse, and she came back a couple months later and her eye was blue. And the daughter was with her and says, can you tell me why her eye went from brown to blue? And I said, yes, she was so full of it, her eyes were brown. And she did a lot of cleansing and all the toxins came out of her body and her eyes went very blue. So that's not common. That's not going to happen very often, but it can happen. And it can definitely fade and change colors as you go through more healing processes.
Okay. I think that's it for questions. So now we get to go to the draw. So if you can stop sharing the screen, Robert, that would be great. Excellent. And let me just go. Okay. There we go.
Do I do another drum roll?
Hold on, a little drum roll. And we've got to be, oh yeah, that's just showing everybody is here. Okay. Close your eyes. And it is Diane Levine.
Diane Levine. I know a Diane Levine. That's crazy.
Yes. Diane.
I know a Diane Levine. I don't know if it's probably not the same one, but I actually grew up. A friend of mine her name was Diane Levine.
Okay.
So
well,
we probably don't know each other, but it was just a strange thing. But congratulations, Diane.
Yes, congratulations, Diane. Reach out to us at the IHN head office, either call or email. And if anything, probably best to reach out to, I think it would be, you could just reach out to me, Anna at instituteofholisticnutrition.com. And we will get you connected with Robert for his amazing iris analysis. I know you're going to love it. And it was so great. Thank you so much, Robert. Oh, just another reminder, if anyone's interested in the continuing education course with Robert, it starts this February. I think it's the second week. It's the second Tuesday, I believe. Of February.
It's actually 16 weeks, actually, I go through.
In 16 weeks. So 16 Tuesdays from 6:30 to 9:30, all done through Zoom. And if you want to know more details about that, again, reach out to myself or Colleen, just call head office. And we will get back to you and we will sign you up. It's really incredible. Everybody I know that took it really loves it and they're using it in their practice. So
I will say this. I know a lot of you are just heavy loaded with homework and curricular activities that you have to do. I do not give homework. So the iridology class is everything you learn in class is what you learned. You don't have to go home and study and do homework. It does not work that way. So the students find it's very easy to take the IHN course and come and do the iridology class. It's only a 3-hour once a week, 1 night a week, 3 hours class. And then again, I don't give you a lot of homework. You're going to want to be looking at everyone's eyes, but I don't actually give you that homework. So it's really easy for you to do and your IHN schooling as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the wonderful talk tonight. It was so great. Third time over. Like I said, I'm still learning something. And if anyone has any questions, reach out to us at head office, email me, everything. So thanks again. Have a wonderful rest of your night, everybody.
Thank you for coming.